More like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio network, and I got it right for once without making a mistake, and I'm quite happy about that.
The crowd goes wild. Yeah!
Right, I'm your host, Irene Allen Block, and with me, as usual, is my beautiful co-host, Mark Johnson. Or should we say Markle Farkle?
Markle Farkle. Yeah, I'm so regretting telling you that last week. So,
yes, never mind, Mark.
So
I won't use it too often. All right?
No, not too often. Just whenever you can.
Okay. So, how are you?
Oh, we're peachy, burning up over here. How are you?
Well, it was hot. I'll tell you what, it was absolutely stifling at the weekend. We took the kids to the beach and everything, the grandchildren, and brought them back. And they had to go to London the same day, so I never had time to bath them. So I stuck them under the garden sprinkler, which sort of worked. Anyway, they had fun. But today the weather's changed. It's gone to the normal temperature for this time of year in the UK. Cloudy, overcast, looking like crap out there and a little bit chilly.
I think we're going to have a bad winter. That's just my gut feeling because it's been such an unusual... The weather pattern has certainly been changing.
Yeah, well, we had about 8 weeks of a heat wave. Whether that will be back or not, I don't know. But, you know, in Portugal and Spain, it's been absolutely diabolical. There's been forest fires everywhere. Even in this country, we've had fires, you know, not as bad as California, obviously, but we've had fires. And I won't be around for the next couple of weeks, you know that, don't you?
And where will you be going?
I'm going to the south of Italy, Millionaire's Playground, as usual, Amalfi.
Woohoo!
But this time I'm taking 3 grandchildren, so, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a nightmare, I expect, but we'll have fun.
Will this be their first time in Italy?
It's their first time, yeah. Yes. Some of my other grandchildren have been there, but this particular 3, it's their first time in Italy. And they're my oldest 3 grandchildren, so I'm able to more cope with them because, you know, step out of line and you're grounded, so you stay there, you know, that sort of thing. Whereas you can't say that to a baby, can you? But... no, I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it. I've been waiting to take these 3 away with me to Italy for since they were born, I should imagine. Now they're old enough to come with their grandparents. They're coming.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, so I'm going to be in the south of Italy, Sorrento, the Isle of Capri, Pompeii, Mount Vesuvius, all that.
See it while it can, while it's still there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pompeii has been rumbling again.
Well, Vesuvius has been rumbling again.
Well, that's
Pompeii.
what I meant. Yeah, well, Pompeii is right below it, so...
Well, so is Naples. You know, if it went off this time, well, that's it. Naples is millions and millions of people. Mind you, they've got a very good evacuation program in place in case it does go off. But just off the coast, there is a fault in the sea. It's not a fault. It's lots of old underground volcanoes, undersea volcanoes. And I can't remember what they're called, but they reckon that if they erupt, it's just going to wipe Italy out.
Yeah.
One of the biggest, they are super volcanoes, apparently, super volcanoes.
Which is what we have in the U.S. underneath Yellowstone and the Yellowstone caldera. Yeah, how many you got there? Because I think there's about 3 or 4 off the coast of Italy. They are super volcanoes the size of Yellowstone. We only have the one in the continental U.S., but if it blows, it will take out most of the U.S. and Canada. because all of the ash that will be dumped will go with the winds straight out from Montana all the way out to over New York and into the Atlantic, and you guys will get it too.
Yeah, it was bad enough when Iceland went up, when that volcano in Iceland, you'd go out in the morning and all your cars were covered in dust.
Yep.
And that was here in the UK, so... God knows what it was like in Iceland.
We forget just how, ever-changing this planet is. And nothing ever stays the same. Everybody screams, oh my God, climate change, climate change. Well, the climate's been changing on this planet since it began. They found that, millions of years ago, it was much hotter. There was a higher CO2 content in the air and the atmosphere. The planet has cooled. We've gone through ice ages. We've warmed. We've cooled. The planet goes through cycles. Yeah. And I think that's what's happening now. I think we're going to be seeing some significant changes in the weather patterns. I don't know if we'll hit another ice age or not, but hey, remember the Sahara Desert used to be a green, lush, location. It was almost a rainforest, and now it's a dry desert. Things change. Antarctica used to be green and lush, and then when the poles changed and it wound up at the South Pole, then it's covered in now a wasteland. So
that's it.
Everything changes.
It does. But what can you do? Right, you can only do your little bit, can't you?
Yep.
To keep the planet going. Keep it green and nice and everything else. Like we were saying earlier on, you're talking about plastic straws being banned in California, where here we've been phasing them out slowly and replacing them with the paper straws that we used to have, or biodegradable straws and everything. We don't go instantly into a complete ban. We do it gradual.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with here in the States. In California, they've banned straws, and they've made it a criminal offense. You could go to jail now for having straws or giving out, for restaurants giving out straws. It's absolutely insane.
That's it. Fill up the jails and charge the taxpayer just because somebody had a straw. How ridiculous is that, huh?
Yep.
And let the murderers walk the streets.
Oh, yeah. It's the craziness. And again, I'll keep my ranting to a minimum because I could go for days. But it's just there's no
common. You never know who's listening, Mark.
Yeah, sometimes I don't care. But there's just no common sense anymore. There's just no. It's just insanity. That is.
It is. Why don't you just phase them out like we're doing? Get rid of the plastic and bring in the biodegradable.
Well, you probably could if it wasn't for the fact that politics has just become so nuts that people are screaming and they want this, they want that, and it's nobody is. I don't know. Nobody's able to think and discuss it rationally. We're always going to extremes over here.
Yeah, you do. We're a little bit more sophisticated here, people.
Yeah, right. Tell that to Tommy Robinson.
Oh, never mind. Anyway, so what are you going to get up to in the near future? Anything? What are you going to do when I'm away?
Well, we'll be having more shows, of course. Now you'll still be here next week. You're not leaving till midweek next week.
I've been packing. I started packing today, and hopefully, I don't know whether I'll be around next Monday or not. It depends on how much I get done. There's a hell of a lot to organise when you're taking kids abroad. Mm-hmm. Sun cream, shampoos, everything, lip seal, cold sore treatment. I'd be like a blooming chemist shop going out there because there's always something. And the gnats out there, they're lethal. I tell you, they're size of bloody dinosaurs. those nights.
Well, I hope you enjoy yourself, because we will. The show will still go on. We'll be continuing. So if you're not here the next couple of weeks, we'll welcome you back, and you'll have to tell us all about it.
Oh, yeah, it just goes to prove you can do without me, doesn't it? All right, okay. And we've got a new show coming out, people, haven't we?
We have Realm of the Supernatural, which is premiering Thursday night at 10 o'clock here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Yeah, and I heard it, and I loved the format, and I thought it was quite an interesting show. It was really good.
Yeah, I think it's going to do really well. So we're really happy to have Lee and Andy, Lee Solway and Andy McCue, who are the hosts. They normally have done this show as a podcast, but now this will be the first time it's actually streaming on a network. So everybody, we really hope you'll all tune in and give their premiere show your blessing. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Okay, and was it last week that we... was it the week before that we premiered
Outer Nowhere, which it just played tonight before tonight's show. So if you missed it, you can tune in. It'll play again a little bit later tonight on the network, and of course the podcast will be up as well with Chris Evers and Paul Sinclair. That's another great show. So I'm really happy with the new shows we've been getting, and the Thursday night lineups with Crypto Realm and Deborah Hatswell's brilliant show, Paradivas, another brilliant show, Ron Murphy back now with Andy Mercer.
Simon's show, everybody's show. There's about 17 or 18 shows going at the moment, isn't there?
Yes.
And we've got more coming.
Yes.
So stay tuned, people, because we'll always have new shows. We're growing and growing and growing. Did you know, Mark, we are a shark network?
We are a what network?
Shark network.
A shark network.
Yes. Somebody insinuated we were a shark network, but I take that as a compliment, because a shark is a big fish in the sea. So as far as I'm concerned, we're big fish in the sea.
Big fish surrounded by jealous little minnows.
That's right.
That's about it.
So thank you for the compliment.
Absolutely. So what do we have for tonight?
You tell me what we have for tonight.
Do I have to?
Yes.
Really? You're gonna make me now?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
You've got to work, haven't you?
Well,
got to make you work.
Well, we want to introduce our guest tonight, Helen Libby Davidson. And Helen is, well, let's find out. Helen, how are you today?
Helen.
You can unmute, Helen.
Here.
There we are.
I'm fine, thank you, guys.
Hello, Helen.
Hello.
Now,
she's there. She was muted, because we told her to mute.
Yes, I know.
So it took a little bit of time to find that button to unmute again. So that was the result there. Anyway, carry on.
So, Helen, thank you for coming on the show. And one of the reasons we asked you to come on is because of your background as a witch. And we wanted to ask you to tell a little bit about yourself, and we'll learn a little bit more about what witchcraft is compared to Wicca, which is different. And so if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, and how did you get involved in being a witch?
Oh, well, I was born and brought up in Cornwall, which even to this day they still have sort of pagan festivals down there. And they've not long had the Green Man Festival, and it was just something that was always around me. I lived with woods in my backyard, but I was like a few minutes away from the ocean. And when you're surrounded by such a natural phenomena, it makes it very easy to bring it into your life, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. So literally from the age of 13 onwards, when it really piqued my interest, I started learning about herbs and medicines and, a more natural way of living, a bit more like what our ancestors did.
Now, with witchcraft, and again, I wanted to stress that, because we had talked with you about this a little bit before you came on the show, and just to have a better understanding it. Now, it's not the same as Wicca. And what is the difference?
Well, there are many different versions of witchcraft. The first one that people always assume we all are is Wicca. Now, that's kind of a more modern term that was brought about by like Gerald Gardner and Doreen Valiente, later the Pharaohs, and it's more of a system than anything else, and it's one that all these people then follow, and it has certain rituals, certain rites, and it's right for some, but not for all. And witchcraft is more of an eclectic feel. You have green witches, now you have kitchen witches. I personally would say I'm more of a hedge witch. So yeah, again, it's all about the herbs and the more natural way of living.
Yeah, and a hedge witch is somebody that practices more on their own rather than with other people. Is that right?
More often than not, yeah. Which makes it even more interesting that I actually win a cousin.
Yeah.
But yeah, most hedge witches are quite solitary, and it's a lovely way of life.
Yeah, you really have years and years ago, and even in my grandmother's time, they were called wise women more than witches. Wise women of the villages and everything. When I first went to Italy, right, somebody I knew out there, a lady out there, elderly lady, she used to tend to everybody in the village. If they needed an injection, she'd give the injection. If they needed medication, they'd give them medication. I had trouble when I was out there. It's a bit embarrassing, this now. I'm going through an embarrassing moment. Well, I had this problem where I hadn't been, if you know what I mean, people, I hadn't been for over a week. Wow. And because of the change of food and everything, I suppose it was. Anyway, I hadn't been for over a week, and she came out with this concoction, and I'm not telling you, it was like a witch's potion. There it was bubbling and bubbling, and it was white, but it was bubbling and bubbling, and this like steam was coming off the top of it, but it was cold. It was, and she said, drink it. So I drank it, and I tell you what, I would have put Vesuvius to shame. Literally put Vesuvius to shame, the way I erupted. It was unbelievable. And that's all I'm going to say, people.
Now, that does provide a graphic image.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
I think I need some brain bleach.
Made my eyes water, I tell you.
Just the eyes?
Oh dear me!
I tell you what, though, that is the reason why it's so brilliant that we can come out now and we'll say we're witches. We don't have to come along and say we're cunning women or wise women, because it's a lot more accepted these days. I mean, over in the UK, I'm not sure about anywhere else, but it was illegal to be a witch up until around 1953. And then we had the repeal of the Witchcraft Act. And that was mainly thanks to people like Gerald Gardner, who was making it known that witches weren't evil, scary people who are going to cast spells on your children and your property and your animals, but they're there to help.
Well, that's it, yeah.
That's why it's be like midwives and what have you.
In the olden days, anybody that had any ailments with their cows, if they weren't giving off enough milk or something, they would point at the old woman in the village and say, she put a curse on my cattle. So, yeah, it wasn't very good at all. Not at all.
Well,
Did you ever go... Oh, sorry.
No,
Sparkle,
go ahead.
Sparkle,
go ahead.
Sparkle.
Ask your question.
I was just asking whether you ever went to the Witch Fest.
No.
I went to it was called the Witch Fest, and it was at the Fairfield Halls in Croydon many, many years ago. And I was literally fascinated by it. Obviously you had a lot of people parading up and down outside from the church saying that it was evil, this, that, and the other. But I went there out of curiosity. And they had stalls there. They were selling things. And, they had talks and one thing. And I thought it was a really, really good day. So I was wondering whether you'd ever been there, because I know one of our hosts, Neil Geddes Ward, he actually went to that particular one selling his paintings. And, he could have been there before I even met him. Anyway, carry on, Mark. What were you going to say?
I see these kind of things advertised all over the country. And, I don't know. I'd love to bring some into.
Yeah, you want it. I tell you what, you want to go there, or you want to go to one of them, because they are really, really good. They're kind of like a cross between a conference, and they even had a group of girls there that was singing, and I can't remember their names either, but they were a pop group, and they were witches, and they're pretty famous. They go around all the get-togethers sort of thing, and do their gigs.
What was it like in Harry Potter, the Weird Sisters or whatever they were called, the Weirding Sisters?
Yay! Oh, these were good.
Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Wealth of knowledge right there.
Mind you, I think she's got a lot to do with the popularity of witchcraft nowadays with younger people. Her books.
Oh, well, between the movies making it very popular now, and it's more of, but, typical of pop culture, it's made things a novelty. And still, people don't take it very seriously. But, as you mentioned with, in Britain, witchcraft was, illegal until recent times. And even anyone who was suspected of witchcraft, even people who were psychic mediums, could be, imprisoned if they came under it. Wasn't Winston Churchill, he had a psychic that he used during World War II that also wound up in prison for witchcraft?
Yeah.
Helen Duncan? Was it Helen Duncan?
Helen Duncan.
No. Well, Helen Duncan, she did as well, yeah. She ended up in prison. And we interviewed her granddaughter, wasn't it her granddaughter we interviewed?
Yes.
Last year sometime, early part of last year, I think. Because she wants to clear her name even now, doesn't she?
Yeah. I do believe Tony Robinson did a film, or did a documentary about it, didn't he?
Yeah.
It was all quite interesting, because they couldn't really debunk her. They couldn't find out why she was able to do the things that she did.
Yeah.
I mean, back in those times, they actually went and they'd have somebody, examine them to make sure they hadn't stashed something away.
Yeah. But you see,
never found out anything on her.
Yeah, Helen wasn't actually a witch, though, was she? She was a medium. She was a psychic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just a bit of useless information here, Mark, if you want.
Okay.
Okay. Witchcraft in Britain became a capital offence in 1563, although Pope Innocent VIII denounced it in 1484. And between that time, 1484 to 1750, over 200,000 witches were tortured, burnt, or hung in Europe. And these were mainly old women, right, with buck teeth, wrinkled skin, or a mole on their chin, who are kept cats, or just innocent old grandmothers.
Well,
it's been debated as well, hasn't it? That that a lot of the kings and queens at the time would rather have their land so they could pass it on to nice rich people, so they'd get rid of these lovely old women, and take their land and give it to the crown. Oh yeah. Yeah, they did that with the Pendle witches, didn't they? Wasn't it the Pendle? They were around that area. They were taking the land from people, and that was a lot of what was going on at the time. If you lived on land and the rich or the lord of the area or whoever wanted your land, you get accused of witchcraft and either jailed. Yeah, it's a good way of getting other people's. I'm going to try that with that area I live next door to.
that land was originally belonging to this house. I want it back.
Oh.
Yeah, he won't build the wall fast enough, so let's accuse him of witchcraft.
Yeah.
Your neighbor.
Yeah.
Well, you know, what's funny about it is it's not funny, it's tragic, but, you know, all this fear and culture of witches and witchcraft, it all comes down to religious points of view. And it comes down to basically one line in the Bible, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. And of course, they've run with that for centuries, the Catholics and the other religions, you know, persecuting what they looked at as witches, but it was also an excuse. And the Catholic Church, especially, you know, during the Middle Ages and during especially the Inquisition and afterwards, and the Puritan days coming in with here in America, you know, anything that looked like it was a threat to Christianity, you can label it satanic or witchcraft and have it literally rubbed out. You know, that you could have people if they stuck to the old ways, and this is what part of it, what modern people don't understand, or modern, you know, pop society doesn't understand, is that there were so many of the old ways, from the pagan religions to the native peoples of different cultures around the world, from the shamans to the pagans, the people dealing with the nature spirits, that all follows under, you know, what they consider to be witchcraft and satanic, because it's not Christian, so it must be this, and we have to fear it and stomp it out. So they get rid of anybody different, the old wise woman of the villages, the old crones that, you know the old herbal recipes, or maybe even they do work with spiritual energies and in healing and doing good, and, you know, because it's they tell you to be afraid of it. They've brainwashed people to be afraid of it. Then they become afraid of it, and they try to stamp it out. And it's only been in recent years that people could be much more open and public about it.
Yeah, but isn't a lot of our medication that we use today stem back to a lot of these potions that they used to make all those years and years ago?
Well, let me ask Helen, what is your thought on that?
Oh, well, now here's the strange thing. When we're touching upon the Bible saying thou shall not suffer a witch to live. Don't quote me on this, but I do believe I read once somewhere that before the 1603 St. James's Bible, it actually said thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live.
Exactly.
And they changed it. It so that it would be witches instead.
Yep, exactly.
And, you know, that on high guidance saying, well, God doesn't like witches, so should we?
Well, and that's part of the problem is, you know, the quote-unquote Bible is many books put together, most of them put back together in the 300 AD under the Council of Constantinople, when Emperor Constantine was trying to form the original Catholic Church, and they're trying to decide what books of the Bible to go in. And so, they allowed some books to go in and some not. People think, oh, well, the Bible's the Word of God. Well, no, it's the word of what these guys wanted to put in, and then what they didn't like, they threw out. Especially anything that mentioned reincarnation or other types of theories or ideas that didn't quite fall in line with the control that they wanted over people. And that line right there is a perfect example. You can call somebody a poisoner using potions or using something to poison somebody, but if you add the supernatural, oh no, a witch instead, that just adds a whole new era of control over people and adds hysteria to it as well. And what's interesting is it's not limited to Judeo-Christian culture, but even in some societies, and here in America, in the Southwest, the Native American peoples, with the Navajo and the Hopi people in the Southwest, they have a great fear of witches and witchcraft in their culture. And they talk about, if you hear the term skinwalker, They talk about skinwalkers being evil witches, which basically is a medicine man who goes bad and uses negativity.
A medicine man that goes bad?
Yes.
Did you say?
Yes.
Oh.
Because
and that makes him shapeshift then?
Well, they start experimenting with the negative side of what they've learned. They get attracted to the darker side, and they have, it's a big fear in the Navajo culture of witches making people sick or causing people to die and causing all sorts of hardships for people. And they claim that the Navajo skinwalkers can shapeshift and become different animals like wolves or crows. And they have a very supernatural quality to them. And there's a great fear in those societies. And people, if they get suspected of being a witch, they can be killed, certainly ostracized.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy in a way, because a lot of these Native American societies have magic all of their own anyway. They work with spirit, they work with energies, and if that was somebody over here, that I'd be called maybe a druid or a witch anyway, because that's what people see us as doing, but they won't use the term on themselves.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you're right. She's right, isn't she? They do work with energy and spirits and things, and exactly the same as what a witch does.
But what you have to be careful.
They use herbal medicine.
Yeah, it's the same as labeling all pagans or druids under one brush too. Different cultures, and even Native American society is a variety of different tribes and subcultures that vary greatly, and it's mostly just those in the Southwest, along the Navajo and the Hopi. In their particular culture, they look at this bad type of medicine man, these skinwalkers, these witches, and with that, the other Native American tribes around the country didn't even think about it, didn't have a problem with it, or they didn't look at things in that kind of area, bad or good or whatnot. So it's very, and I'm not claiming to be an expert in any way, shape, or form of Native American culture. I'm just saying, from what I understand, it's just that one aspect in that one part of the country where they have it in their culture. But most of in Europe, of course, and around the world with Christian nations, that's been the edict of Christianity, is the big fight against Satan, and witchcraft is part of that, when in reality witchcraft started off as a nature religion, or it's not even a religion. And again, Helen, this is where we have you on to help straighten us out. Our terminology is to understand what it really means to be a witch or to deal in witchcraft.
Okay, well, I'll go back to when you were saying about it being a religion. Most witches won't see it as being a religion, more of a system of belief. And I don't know whether it is true or not, but in the UK, every 10 years we have a census, and they will ask you certain things, and one of those questions being, what is your religion? And now, one of the earlier censuses, I think around maybe 2001, enough people wrote on it pagan, that pagan then became a recognised religion. So if people then, that's when Jedi is a religion over here now.
Yeah, it is.
It's true, it's a religion, because enough people wrote it on a census that the government then said, well, okay, we've had more than 2,000 odd people saying they are Jedi religion, therefore it must be. It's crazy. It's crazy how they got that out.
Yeah,
and yet, for some reason,
that's true.
witchcraft has never been classed as a religion. I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah, but paganism has been going before any of the other religions, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So why wasn't it recognised? So why wasn't it recognised until about 2,000 people decided to put it down on the censor form?
I don't know.
It makes it when all our festivals and everything that we have here, Easter, Christmas, and everything, it's all tied back to paganism. You know.
Yeah.
So
I think it's just about people becoming more confident in the fact that they're not going to be, sort of sought out for being the bad person, saying they're pagan, because they're more willing to have people around them that can accept that. Be it work, college, friends, family. I mean, excuse me. I have always been quite open about what I am. My family know, my friends know, my work colleagues know.
Yeah.
I think we're just.
If you're going for a new job or anything like that, you wouldn't worry about putting it on the application form what your religion was.
No, I'd probably, to be fair, I would probably put maybe pagan to begin with until they knew me, because if I know, even to this day, gosh, you could say you've got tattoos and you wouldn't get a job, let alone putting down a witch.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not allowed to discriminate against anybody for a belief or the way they look or anything, but the fact remains that it can influence them.
Yeah, it's true. They're not allowed to discriminate, but they will find a way of getting around it.
Yeah. I mean, the last job that I had, I nearly was not employed because I have tattoos. And, my boss at the time told me, she just spoke to the director and said, you can't be doing that. So, it just goes to show that, in some places in the country, it's still a bit odd for things like that. But you ask most witches if what they believe is a religion, they'll say no. It's a way of life.
Well, this is it. The way I would have put it, it's a way of being. And that's it. Maybe it's because I stem back to the Brahms seer. So, to me, I feel more pagan than anything else. Mind you, I do tell them on my senses that I am alien, Brian. I'm Mark. Brian. What about Brian? Who the bloody hell's Brian?
Your husband.
He's not even here. He's 250 bloody miles away. Anyway, go on.
He's called Brian Stand Up.
He'll be quite pleased I mentioned him on the show when he does hear it. He go, oh, you mentioned me.
Well, Helen, let me ask you then, as being a witch, okay, what constitutes being a witch? I mean, I understand that you're working with things that are more of a nature-based, but is it part of what people sometimes think of witchcraft is casting spells or working with different types of energies or creating potions? What is it that constitutes a witch, good or bad?
Good or bad. Well, now that's a good one in itself. Is a people say, I'm a white witch. So people recognize the fact that, oh, look, they must be good because they're calling themselves a white witch. But it didn't really do us any favors, because most witches will go on what their conscience believes. Some will go on what we call the law of three. So what you give out, you get back times three. But in my eyes, karma. That's just karma. So it's down to the individual. It's down to the conscience of what you can and can't do. But if you ask any witch, they will all give a different account of what witchcraft means to them. To me, I do spells, now and again, not all the time. I study herbs and the magicals as well as medicinal properties. I celebrate the 8 Sabbats throughout the year. We call that the Wheel of the Year. With my coven, we'll have Espets, which is the full moon light. And I'll meet up with them and we'll do things that are just what we call crafty, so making little things out of natural things that you can find around. I mean, today, for instance, I've been making a scrying mirror. It's been covered with shells and pieces of wood. And, so it's different. It's different for every single person. You'll never get the same answer from any witch saying, what is witchcraft to you?
What about, in dealing with spiritual types of energies and what people would consider to be the paranormal, do you have you learned any of that type of craft or participate in those types of things?
To a degree, yes. I mean, energy is perpetual. We're all part of the universe. It's all interlinked. I kind of see it as a bit of a matrix, not like the film, but everybody's interlocked with somebody else. We're all connected, no matter who you are. But witches tend to try and use that energy. We'll call on the earth, air, fire, and water energies and bring them into our circles, or bring them into our crafts and our spells, because we know that if you call to a certain energy and be on the sort of same wavelength as it, that it then becomes a power that we can use, if that makes any sense at all.
Do you have experiences in dealing with or working with, and this is kind of a variation of the last question, but in what I would call intelligent or conscious types of spiritual entities?
Yes, absolutely. We have what's known as different astral planes, different planes of existence that are kind of superimposed on our own. And if you know how, you can get to them, you can travel to them, you can see different beings. I personally love working with the Fae. Now, they are guardians of the earth. Down in Cornwall, they might call them Spriggans. Up here, they might be known as gnomes or elves. They are earth spirits, and they are there. They do watch over us. I totally believe that. And each element has its own name. For instance, I can say earth has more like Spriggans in the name. The east, for air, we have the sylphs, being both air and light substance. In the south, we have salamanders. They rule fire. And in the west, we have undines, which then rule and watch over the oceans of the world. So yeah, they're all nature-based spirits, and in different countries they'd be called different things. But each witch will, at some point in her journey, will call upon these other spirits to help them do their work.
That's amazing.
Now,
absolutely amazing.
You mentioned in her journey, do you feel only women can be witches, or is there a difference between witches and warlocks or sorcerers, or however they want to call the male counterparts?
Males are witches too. I guess I'm just saying she because I have mostly she witches around me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, absolutely, you do get male witches. I think the term warlock was a misquote along the way somewhere. Some people say it's a Scottish term meaning traitor. I don't know how true that is. I've not studied Scottish language as such, but yeah, apparently males are not warlocks. They are simply witches.
No, I heard that as well. That that it's not real. Warlocks is a fictitious thing. The word warlock, I think it was more for film or something like that, maybe Hammer House of Horrors or something.
It wouldn't surprise me.
But like I said, I come from Scottish stock, and apparently there's two known witch. I found one in the library. One of my relatives got stoned as a witch on a mountain in Scotland.
Oh.
Way back in the 16th century, or maybe a bit earlier. And also, I also come from Coniacock, the Brown Seer, And I'll tell you what's interesting about him. He actually did they believe he got burnt in a barrel of tar, but because he was a seer. He was literally a seer. He could see and predict. It was like the Scottish Nostradamus. Okay, and what's interesting, he told somebody the truth about what their husband was doing one day, and she was the wife of the laird, and the Earl of Seaforth, and she didn't like it, so she had him burnt in some tar because what he told her was about her husband was having an affair with someone else. But there's a little story of the legend of this here goes, right, that his mother was actually walking through a graveyard. And this was in the days when the ghosts walked the earth, spirits walked the earth, okay? And she came across a Danish princess, the ghost of a Danish princess. All right. Okay, so Mark's just heard a growl. Okay, right. She came across the ghost of a Danish princess who was heading back to her grave. So she blocked the way so that this Danish princess ghost couldn't get back into her grave, and she wouldn't allow her to pass until she gave her one tribute. And the tribute she asked for was that her son would be able to have the second sight. And that same day, Kenneth Mackenzie, which is a Coniac Cock, the Pram seer, he actually found a small stone with a hole in it. And when he looked through it, he could see into different worlds and he had visions. And that's where he made his predictions from, the small stone. Well, I've got one.
You've done a hag stone.
Yeah, I got a hag stone with a hole in it.
How appropriate.
And shut up.
Sorry.
I got a hag stone with a hole in it, right? But as of yet, I've not been able to see anything, any predictions through it. I'm not been able to predict anything through it. But I do keep crossing over into these different worlds. Apparently, Kenneth, the Brahm seer, right, was able to live with in two worlds. He was able to impose one world on top of another world or something or other. Anyway, that's the legend. So whether he's actually did exist or not, I'm not sure. But apparently he is from the same clan as me, the Mackenzie clan. And he does go back to the Earl of Seaforth time. And but that was the 17th century. He was meant to have lived, but there is no record of him in the 17th century, but there's a record of him in the 16th century. But everywhere that's written about him, it says he lived in the 17th, but there is a record of him in the 16th. So he did exist, but I think they got the century wrong. Anyway, that's it. So I come from witchcraft stock, but as of yet, mind you, I say this, Mark, when I went to the Witch Fest, I did buy a wand. I got it beside I bought a wand, and it's massive bit of twisted stick, like a branch, and it's beside my bed, and I use it as a weapon. If anyone comes in that I don't like, it's bang. That's what I've got it stuck by my bed for, but because I don't know what else to do with it. It is it's a nice object.
There is actually a way that we make wands to be completely individual, and it's a measurement. You kind of put your arm, you kind of like fold your arm up with your fingers outstretched, and your wand should then measure from your elbow to your fingertip, and that's an individual measurement just for you.
Oh, well, this particular twisted one that I've got is about the length of my leg, I tell you.
Oh my gosh!
But I've also got another one that's it's got feathers on it. It's got crystal in its nose, and it's more for wafting bloomin' yeah. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Beautiful bird feathers and everything. And, it's got crystals in the handles and it's got crystal at the end of it, a big pointed crystal. And I keep that in a box because I like it. And my friend, she bought me a broomstick once because she always called me a witch. And I've never been a witch. I've never been a witch, but she calls me a witch. And she bought me this broomstick. Okay. And no matter how much I try to kickstart the bloody thing, Mark, it won't take off.
So no Quidditch for you then.
No.
But, even if it did, how uncomfortable of a seat would that be? To fly around on a stick wedged up the wazoo half the day.
Up your wazoo as well. But the only time I've used it was to chase the kids on Halloween around the table in the dining room. I had the broomstick and I was chasing them with it, sitting on it and go, "Woo!" running around the table.
I could tell you a little tale about broomsticks, but I'm not sure it's not exactly a PG.
Oh, that's okay. We own the network. We can say what we want. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, apparently the term riding a broomstick came about when many, many, many years ago, witches would cover their broomsticks with a certain substance, ride the broomsticks, become high, like some kind of hallucination, and they're running around with broomsticks thinking they were flying. So, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And riding a broomstick.
I'm flying, man. Far out.
That may be the answer to why, where the legend of flying on a broomstick comes from then.
It could be.
Yeah, they all got stoned.
Yeah.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, well, my relative got stoned, but not in the right way.
Right.
Oh, yeah, he's
True.
Well, Helen, let me ask you a question. We kind of diverted from it a little bit, and I wanted to ask about wands. Okay, let's, in your perspective as a witch, what is the purpose of a wand?
Oh, gosh, the multi-purposing. Witches use wands to open circles sometimes if they want to bring in the element of air, because a lot of wands are dedicated to that element. And it depends on what the wand is made out of, because the different woods have different attributes. So one could be for protection, another for healing, to work with the fae and earth energies. So they're all they should all be individual. Some people like metals and stones and crystals on them. I have one that I have a stone on it called Dragon Vein. And they're so beautiful. They're like kind of purpley, pinky crystals with lines going through them. And for me, it just brings an extra piece of loveliness in, because crystals tend to amplify the feelings of anything. So if you're using in a wand or an SMA, brilliant. But yeah, it's just a very individual thing that people will use wands either for magic or as part of a ritual.
Now, with wands, do the wands themselves have any kind of power, or do they act more as a channel for the person's own power?
I was going to say, Mark, but before you answer that, Helen, right, now these ones that I've got indoors, I bought them more as ornaments, but I've got an attachment to them. I have got an attachment. I have got feeling for those ones, and I don't know why. I don't get them out very often, but, it's just knowing that they're there.
I think probably that acts on some kind of subconscious level. If you're going into some place to buy something like that, like anything with crystals and stones or wands, you'll find yourself subconsciously drawn to one that you're attracted to.
That's true. That's true.
Times I've been in with places that sell crystals, I'll go through them and go, nope, don't want that one. Nope, don't want that one.
Yeah.
And you kind of find one that's suited to you. And so that becomes just the same for any other magical item. It will come to you when the time is right, and it will be yours because it feels right. So there is that, but they do hold energy themselves, and the more things that you can do with them on a magical basis, the stronger they will become as a channel, as well as an individual item.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason I'm asking that, and this is something I haven't told you about, but when we were originally talking before the show, is that I am a shamanic practitioner, and I've gone through some training with that in learning on healing and doing some other things, and for me, and the way that I was trained, and what makes sense to me is objects like that. Let's say, in witchcraft, using a wand, in shamanism, using certain crystals or stones, or even certain objects during a ritual, that there's no power itself in the object. The object itself is just an object, but it has no power unless it's used by the person. It's more of a channel of that person's energy, or by allowing, even other higher spirit or whatnot working through that person to come through and direct and channel that energy. So everything is a tool, and these types of things don't have power in themselves, but as a tool, they're used by the practitioner, the person, to channel that and concentrate that energy, or help, the energy flow in certain directions. What would you say to that?
To a certain degree, absolutely. There's no doubt about it that when a person connects with a wand or a crystal, it just amplifies because of the user. But I would also say that crystals, some semi-precious metals, everything holds an energy. So it will have some form of energy in there to begin with, which is why you'll see people use crystals to guard their homes, or, crystals themselves, they have so many different uses. And it's not necessarily because they hold the power, but they can help amplify it on their own. I have crystals on my windowsill.
Well, even science has proven crystals are fantastic for... They all vibrate at different frequencies. In fact, everything vibrates at its own frequency, but certain crystals certainly vibrate and enhance certain frequencies, which is why they're used in a lot of electronic equipment, but they can also, be used to channel other types of energies as well. And, quartz crystals or certain other types of crystals, they just have great properties for dealing with energies. And it's a scientific fact, too, but not a lot of people are aware of that.
No, you're right. And that's why we love them so much. Fair enough. People go out and buy specific crystals, but a lot of their energies will overlap. And it's the same with herbs as well. You'll have one herb that can be like a healer, it can be a protector, a cleanser, and you'll have that in crystals too. Like you were saying, quartz crystal, clear quartz crystal. Oh my gosh, that can just be used for virtually everything.
So you could have two crystals and they could conflict with each other. Is that what you mean? Like...
Well, I wouldn't say conflict.
Like with herbs, you can have, like you say, cleansing herbs that are good for you, and then you can have something like deadly nightshade. It's going to kill you,
You wouldn't want to be taking any of that. No. Sort of. They kind of, more like they overlap each other.
Yeah.
If you can't get hold of one crystal because maybe it's rare, but another crystal has the same properties and is easier to get, you'll use that one.
Well,
it's also, Irene, it's if different crystals resonate at different frequencies, they vibrate at different frequencies and channel those frequencies differently. So one crystal might be better at doing certain thing, and another crystal is better at doing another certain thing. If you're using them both at the same time, depending on the frequencies, they either help each other and enhance and create something new, like a hybrid type of energy, or they don't help each other at all, or they maybe even in rare instances they can cancel themselves out. It's like mixing your favorite alcoholic beverage. Okay, you can put it won't taste good unless you put the right stuff in it together. And some things work good together and some things are horrible together.
And I suppose that's the same with your wand. You've been using your wand for so long, so it's sort of got your imprint on it. Your signature is in it. Everything about you is on that wand. So if I was to get that wand and try and use it for anything, it really wouldn't react for me.
Probably not. Not the way that it would for me.
No.
It might not even feel right for you if you touched it. It might be the energy that you need, kind of thing. But I kind of feel it's the same with a lot of other items as well, especially those used in divination, tarot cards being like the most obvious.
Yeah.
People do not like you touching their tarot cards because things like that hold on to the energy of the person that owns it. So I'm not the greatest tarot reader on the planet at all, but I do now and again. I'll kind of pick them up and go through them and maybe ask a question and pull one out, and that's the one that I would use. But things like scrying mirrors or scrying bowls, crystal balls even, the person that's using it will get the most out of it, whereas if you said to somebody else, okay, have a look in my crystal ball, they might not see anything at all. It's not theirs. It's not something they're familiar with, and they possibly might not even know how to use it.
I think that's where it goes back to vibration, because even the person using it, they have their own energy and vibration, and which will use and resonate with certain tools where somebody else who has a completely different vibrational energy won't be able to use it because it's not a match. It's not a correct match. And sometimes, and I can't help but, keep deflecting to the old Harry Potter world, but, even in that series, I think there's a lot of kernels of truth in there. They mention in the beginning, the first book, that the wand chooses the wizard. It's certain wands will work good with certain people because that tool resonates with them, but it won't work as good as with other people.
Yeah. And that's the whole key to witchcraft is, regardless of what system you believe in, it's a personal choice and a personal path that you're going to take. Because everybody might use the same things or have the same things as you, but to them it'll be different. That's the easiest way of it, kind of guessing at, what an outsider looking in would be able to tell them.
Yeah, so witchcraft is the old way. Wicca, now that's more modern, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you know? What is that? Do we know exactly what Wicca's about?
I think. I'm not entirely sure where the phrase Wicca first came from. There's a lot of people that will argue over it. But it is a term that seems to have cropped up in and around the 50s when Gerald Gardner was up there, and some of the old greats, and Janet and Stuart Farrar, obviously Alex and Maxine Sanders being two others. And they kind of were the forerunners of very modern day witchcraft. And they would come up with these systems and call it Wicca. And, it kind of ran like a very well-oiled machine that have covens, that have, reasonably equal male to female ratios, that have a high priest and a high priestess, that have rituals that they would stick to each month or through the Sabbats and the wheel of the year. And it became a very organised religion in that respect.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work for everyone.
So it's very similar, but then miles apart. Also miles apart from actual witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It does work for an awful lot of people. They get a lot out of it, and that's brilliant. And I think that brings a more natural path to this world, and that makes us think about the choices that we make and the impact for it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It really is.
Right. So, Helen, you live near the Pendle Witches, do you?
Yes, I am in Pendle. Yeah.
You're actually in Pendle, so you're a
Yeah.
I can actually say I'm talking to a Pendle witch.
You can.
Oh. Hey, everybody! I'm talking to a Pendle witch. Okay,
so there are quite a few of us. I mean, I started a little Facebook group a couple years back, thinking to myself, there has to be some witches in this area.
Yeah.
2 years later, I'm kind of a picky, I suppose, maybe, but I prefer to have people in the group that are actually in this area, or at least have a connection to it. If somebody's over in Japan, well, you're not a Pendle witch, are you? You're over there.
Oh, well, that's it.
We've got about 200 members, and I started it because I'm like, this is my path. I would love to meet others similar.
And do any of them go back to having any Pendle witches as relationships? Those particular Pendle witches that we're famous for in this country.
I don't think there are any.
There's no descendants.
Themselves known.
No,
I don't think we have, unfortunately.
Well,
but, it's.
Well, I was just going to say, even if there were there, what do you think? Do you think there really were Pendle witches at that time? Or is it what we mentioned earlier that, back then especially, and it happened here in the U.S. in the Salem witch trials, people were accused of witchcraft either because they wanted to take their land or they had a vendetta against them and didn't like them, and it's a great way to get rid of somebody.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened here, Mark.
Yeah, so that's what I was asking. Do you think there really were Pendle, quote-unquote, witches, or do you think it was an hysteria caused by jealousy and greed?
Can I answer that? I believe they were Pendle wise women. I don't believe that they were wise, that they did, because my grandparents did and my great-grandparents did. They all made their herbal concoctions and everything, and that's the way they lived in those days. You didn't have the chemist shops that you've got today and everything. You had to rely on herbs. Yeah. So that type of witch, the wise one, the cunning woman. Yeah.
If you traced back the names of those accused and those condemned of witchcraft back then, a lot of the homes and the land are still here to this day. You can see them, and it's such a kind of, it's an area of the Northwest that still retains that sort of magic of the earth feel to it. Just a place, and looking at Pendle Hill, it feels the same now as it probably did then. I mean, they live close to the earth. I don't know whether they would actually call themselves witches back then. I doubt that they would. But there's something about this area that seems to draw witches and the supernatural. I've not looked into ley lines or anything like that, whether the energies have crossed in this area at a particular point. But there's something about it that is as magic now as I think it was back then.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, Was that you?
Was what, who?
I don't know. I think it was Helen talking to somebody. Wasn't it, Helen?
No.
Did you talk to somebody? No.
No.
Not the cat. Not the cat.
Not the cat, although he is looking at me now.
Yeah, but the Pendle Witches was round about the same time, wasn't it? I'm not sure the Salem Witches, what time?
It was
1612, bit before.
The Pendle Witches were earlier. The Salem witch trials, I believe, were in the 1670s or 1660s, 1670s.
Ours was a bit earlier, but it was sweeping the countryside. It was sweeping Europe then, like I said. earlier on, between 1484 and 1750, over 200,000 witches were killed in Europe. So it was sweeping the countryside. So, it's quite obvious that it would have, that phenomena or whatever you say could call, whatever you could call it, would have spread over there as well to America. And
you can still find on YouTube. There's a documentary called, I think it's The Child of Pendle, because it was this young girl that started off.
That's right.
Pointing the finger. And it documents what happened to the witches, what happened to the girl after it. And I'm pretty sure I watched something many years ago actually, about the Salem witches, that they were trying to blame it on a crop blight, and that there was something wrong with.
Yeah, and it wasn't it a young girl in that as well pointed the finger?
There were several young women who did that.
Young women, yeah.
Yeah, several young women did it, and it was like a form of mass hysteria coupled by some, greed and revenge, and they kind of like became a cult of celebrity at that point, blaming witches, and it just fueled the hysterical fire, so to speak. But the actual, if you think about over here in America, at that point in time, America was really filled with religious refugees coming from Europe and England. You had the Puritans coming in, and I'm sorry, these people were extremely religious, very cult-like in their beliefs, and anything that came across that looked like witchcraft, they flipped over.
Oh, that's true. And not only that, but at the time it was all going on over here, right? Like Matthew Hopkins, he was getting paid per witch. So the more old women that women that he accused of witchcraft and hung or burnt, they burnt them. Wait a second, they burnt them in Europe. I think they hung them over here. They hung them over in the UK, but they burnt them in Europe. So the more he done, the more money he got. He would be employed by areas like towns and cities and things to clear the witches away. And he would get so much money for doing it. The bloke was on a good thing. Or he thought he was on a good thing.
Yeah, so much for what he did to other people.
Yeah.
Wasn't he become known or something to do with the Hammer of the Witches?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a nightmare. Matthew Hopkins, Witchfinder General.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at going back a little bit further during the Inquisition days, where they're accusing anybody, of being heretics against the church. It's the same kind of power. Power corrupts. You task somebody with a religious fervor to go out and find witches. He's going to find witches everywhere. And you know what? That's what's happening in the paranormal field today here in the U.S., because everything is flipping demons. You talk, all the TV shows are demons. Everything has to do with demons. And you know what? People who like John Zaffis. And again, I like John. I know John. He's a nice guy. And this isn't a slam against him. It's just that if you specialize in being a demonologist, what are you going to encounter 90% of the time? Demons.
Or so they say, yeah.
Yeah, or so they say.
These demons are not demons anyway. But the point is, at the end of the day, it's where television's concerned, a demon sells better than a ghost.
Oh, yeah, because it's a fear factor.
That's right. It's a fear factor. It gets bums on seats, you know.
Scare the crap out of somebody, they'll tune in. If the nightly news told you all the good things that were going around, you'd turn it off because you'd be bored. But scare the crap out of people, and they'll tune in to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you know what? That happened even back then in those days. You scare the crap out of people, get them all riled up. It's why people like to scare themselves now. Go to a haunted house, go see a scary movie. It's a thrill. And somebody who's in a position of power, like these young people who were accusing people of being witches, these young people suddenly found themselves with a great amount of power. And it goes right to their heads.
Oh, I'll tell you another thing. Down at Canterbury, they got at the back of this restaurant, they got a ducking stall. You know what a duck install was? They used to stick the witch on there and duck her into the water.
Oh, I thought that was a device that installed ducks.
No, turd. Anyway, if she drowned, she was innocent. But if she survived, she was classed as a witch and she'd be took off and hung.
An absolute no-win situation.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. It's like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you know, when they're trying to try the witch and everyone's hysterical. Of course, they put a fake carrot on her and they call her a witch, and then they're going to weigh her to see if she weighs the same as a duck. And of course, the real big gag of it was that, you know, she did weigh the same as a duck, and she goes, "Well, that's a fair cop."
Do you know something? I'm just reading on here, right? About Matthew Hopkins, and apparently what they used to look for was the devil's mark, okay, which would be a wart, a mole, or even a flea bite, right? Yeah. Was taken to be a devil's mark. And what he used what he called a jabbing needle to see if these marks were insensitive to pain. Now, this needle was a 3-inch long spike, right? Now, if it was insensitive to pain, right, and they didn't feel any pain, then they were classed as a witch and they were taken off and hung. So this needle was a 3-inch spike which retracted into a spring-loaded handle so that there was no pain. You know, the poor unfortunate woman wouldn't feel any pain. So she was taken off, hung as a witch, and he copped the money.
You know, it was just a nasty system because they're just going to keep on torturing and see manifest absolutely anything. Just to make it stop.
It must have been terrible to live in those days because, you know, all of us, the majority of us have got marks on our bodies, whether they're birthmarks, they're moles, freckles, or whatever. So at the end of the day, you know, everybody would have been classed as a witch. And I bet you if you stripped him naked, you would have found a few marks on him as well.
Well, you know, it didn't help that those bastards, the Brothers Grimm, in their fairy tales, half of the fairy tales dealt with evil witches wanting to cook Hansel and Gretel or do all sorts of mischievous evil. Of course, people eat those stories up, and then when anything goes wrong in their lives, let's blame it on the witch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very sad, but yeah, true.
It is sad, I tell you. It is sad. But
well, I have a question again, Helen, in dealing with the stereotypical ideas about witches and witchcraft. You mentioned earlier you had your cat there.
Yeah.
What about the idea that witches had cats? Like you hear about the black cat always with the witches. Halloween, you always have black cats.
Familiar.
Yeah, being a familiar of a witch. First of all, what is that about? And, you know, is there any kind of, I don't want to say truth to it, just mainly what is that about?
Okay. Years ago, a witch's familiar was actually called a pyewacket. That meant familiar. I used to have a cat called Pixie.
I had a turtle called Pyewacket.
Yeah, it was there.
I had 7 turtles, and they all began with P, and Pyewacket was one of them. I wonder where I got that name from.
It's a very old one. Not many's heard of them this day.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something about certain creatures, and some of them seem to be very, very drawn to magic. I mean, my cat. Well, in fact, all my cats, I've always taken an interest in what I'm doing witchy-wise. I'll either jump up on my altar or, like this little one here, he follows me absolutely everywhere. He's like my little shadow. He was crying his heart out before because he wasn't in the room with me. Now he is. He's perfectly all right. But I don't know whether it's because over the centuries we have drawn away from living on the land and trusting our instincts and, you know, working hand in hand with the earth and literally tilling the soil. And we've become very removed from it all. And animals are there to remind us that that connection is still there. They feel it, and witches try and tune into that as well, which is why you end up having pets as familiars, because they sense things that we might struggle to see or to feel.
Well,
they're just attracted to it.
And again, going back to a more modern perspective on it, is our pets, especially cats, seem to be very sensitive to paranormal things. I mean, you can watch a cat, or sometimes even a dog, but a lot of times cats, their eyes will be moving around the room like they're watching something, especially in houses that seem to have activity. And they seem very keen on what they're watching, and you're looking at them like there's nothing there. But is there something there? Could be
absolutely
that they're more sensitive and more in tune to these natural energies that we can't perceive.
Yeah. I think that's perfectly true. I mean, we can see them, but that takes practice. And to be fair, not everybody would be able to do that. I used to be able to when I was very young, and the same for a lot of children. Children try to tell us that they see things, and then most parents will come along and say, no, dear, you can't have an imaginary friend, or I'm sure you were mistaken, and they kind of closes it off for them unless they're lucky enough to be with adults that then encourage the fact that they're seeing something that most people don't.
I agree. You know, if your child's telling you that she's playing with a friend and things like that, you shouldn't, discourage them, because you never know.
Well, children and animals seem to be much more sensitive and in tune to these types of energies before it's programmed out of them as they get older. I mean, my mother did that to me. I used to, not that I ever had imaginary friends, but I'd sometimes hear my name being called. And I go up and go, "Did you call me?" And she goes, "No, I didn't call you. It's just your imagination." I'm like, no, it wasn't my imagination. I heard somebody calling my name. And
what about my mother then? What she used to say? "Oh, shut up, Irene. If anybody's going to see a ghost, it's me. I was born in a haunted house."
Yeah, and she dismisses what you experience, and right away it becomes unimportant, and then we start blowing them off.
Yeah, this is it.
I mean, I remember when I recorded my first EVP back in high school. This is back in the early 80s, before the term EVP was even coined, and it was crystal clear, and my mother was convinced we faked it. "Oh, that's just magic. No, you couldn't have done that. No." And then she didn't want to hear about it because it threatened her worldview.
Yeah. Your mother and my mother are very much alike, I think. Anyway.
I bet both of you would have heard of Kirlian photography.
Yes.
And, you're capturing auras on film. Now, I think a lot of animals already sense and see auras quite clearly, even possibly auras of beings that we can't see that might kind of share the sort of same time and space as we do, because there are other realms other than our own.
That's true.
Especially around what people would call Halloween, I call Samhain, but around that time, they say that the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. So we not only is it our sort of Celtic New Year, it's a time when we welcome back our ancestors and invite them to join us. And, it's easier at that point in time for a lot of people to have experiences that the rest of the year they might not have. But for some of us, that is like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We can sense auras, we sense the shift of energy, and fair enough, we might not necessarily see anything, but we definitely feel it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I've got to say this, for anybody thinking that I'm making rude noises or my tummy's rumbling or anything, it's not. Gertie, the paranormal pup, or the mascot of Paranormal UK Radio, is in the room. snoring.
And snoring like a freight train.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. If people may hear something coming over mine, there's a major thunderstorm going right over my head right now. So you may occasionally hear a boom coming through the mic.
A boom.
Oh, speaking of booms, no, that's a weird thing going on with this earth right now because, I was listening to you both talking about, like the super volcanoes. Now, there is somewhere that's just outside of Yellowstone. I think it's about 6 kilometers away. It's another park. And they've closed it down because a fissure 30 meters long has opened up there.
Oh, don't say that.
Yeah, I've heard.
Is that right? No.
I've heard about that, but the problem is I haven't seen that in any, well, I hate to call anything legitimate news source these days because most of it's crap, even the big ones, but I haven't seen it really verified anywhere that that's true. I've seen it I've heard it going around the internet. I'll have to ask my brother. He was just actually up in Yellowstone for a vacation recently, so I'll have to find out. But yeah, I've heard that, but there hasn't been any verification that makes me feel like that could be a true story.
Somewhere. It's at a certain park, and I did read it on their website that they'd shut this fissure down, but they were trying to make people not panic about it, saying it's not actually connected to the Yellowstone caldera at all. It's something separate.
Yeah, that's a bald-faced lie if it's near Yellowstone. That whole area, it's like 100 miles in circumference, is one big super volcano. And when it blows, it's going to blow. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's overdue to blow. So
it is by about 6,000 years, apparently.
Yeah.
And I do believe there's another geyser there that's becoming more and more frequent. So I'm almost able to predict it like they can with Old Faithful. But yeah, these booms, there was a rather quite well-known YouTuber.
Yes. The booms and the
boom things.
The horn trumpets.
I don't know. Yeah. I think it's just Mother Earth letting us know that she's changing again, which she has done repeatedly over the millennia.
She's about to kick our asses.
Quite possibly.
You can't blame her, can you? We take everything out of her, but we never give anything back.
Yeah, I mean, how do you get rid of vermin?
That's it.
The Earth maybe seems like, oh, yeah, they've not turned out how I want. Let's get rid of them and start again.
Yeah, shake them off. Yeah, going back. Yeah, going back to familiars, right? Am I right in saying that when they used to hang the witches, or they used to during the witch trials and witch hunts in the olden days, that they would also take the familiars and hang them or destroy them as well, or what they thought were the familiars of these witches?
I think you're right. I mean, I think they used to do that to the witches. I know to other criminals. A famous one, I guess, would be Dick Turpin over in New York. He's buried in New York. Yeah. And apparently he's buried there with his horse.
Yeah.
Because his horse carried him, so therefore his horse must be bad too.
Dick Turpin. For you, Mark, Dick Turpin was a famous highwayman. He used to rob the stagecoaches. Mm-hmm. And anyone else with a bit of money. Yeah. Very, very famous. They hung him, didn't they?
They did, yes, at Tyburn in New York.
Yeah.
And then, they killed his horse and were both buried there.
In
a little cemetery just outside the city walls.
Yeah.
I think you're right there. I think they did destroy any familiars in case they wanted revenge, and I don't know how a cat would go about revenge or a toad, but yeah, I think they'd see them as evil beings and they needed to be destroyed before they could do anything bad.
Well, if your familiar was like Irene's cynical parrot Pickles, the Pope parrot, Pickles Pee-wee, he would rip people's faces off. That's one evil bird.
He'd hang them from his blooming plastic ball in his cage.
Mm-hmm.
He really would. But I got this notorious parrot. He's a Senegal parrot. He's the most evil little bugger. Ever since I've had him 35 years, and he's been a nasty little sod all his life. But I love him to pieces. But I tell you, you can't touch him. You can't go near him. He literally rips you to shreds if you do. And he's painful. So painful. Anyway, getting back to that. Your cats, are they your familiars? Or would you just say they were pets?
I would say no. I would say one is and one isn't. The one that is, he's here with me now. He will quite literally spend hours just sitting and looking at me.
Yeah.
When he's not doing that, he will sit and just gaze into space or sit in front of a wall. He's quite a special one. He's the only one out of his litter who will survive.
Yeah.
We used to have his twin, but unfortunately he died at a very young age.
So
now this little one here, he seems to be very much tuned in to things that I can't see or I can't hear.
Yeah.
I have seen ghosties here and there, and vortex and orbs, and I can see all sorts of strange things. But this little one, he sees even more than that. It's kind of like a little lookout for me.
Yeah.
When you start looking into space and looking at something, I try and see what the hell it is he's looking at.
Yeah, but the old folklore says that the cats and the familiar, or whether the cats, crows, or whatever the familiar was, that the witches actually used to do the bidding of the witch. You know, she'd send it off to spy on the neighbour and one thing or another, and so I was wondering, do they do your bidding, or do they just sit there and look at things, look at the wall, and do cat things?
Difficult one, that. Well, I do have a statue of Bast on my altar.
Yeah.
And there's something about cats that I love. So I wouldn't say that he does my bidding as such, but he lends his own kind of energy to what I do. If I do things in the house, spells or nothing like that, he wants to be involved.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He just
he's nosy. He wants to know what's. He's nosy. He wants to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that if there was a big black creepy crawly spider going across the floor and you said get it, he'd jump it. I'm sure of that.
Never say that. No, not spiders. Flies, absolutely. He's great. He's a great fly hunter, this one.
Is he?
Yeah. But he hunts it and then he actually eats them. So I'm like, ew.
It's a bit like my dog Gertie. You know, she'll hunt anything and eat anything. It doesn't matter, even a pair of slippers. Yeah. But I suppose if I had to say out of all my animals, and I've got a lot of animals, that one was my familiar. I'm trying to think now. Well, Gertie won't do anything unless you pay her with food. I suppose it would be Pippa, the Jack Russell.
Oh.
Yeah, she's a little worker. She's okay. But my dogs are bright. Yeah, go and bark at the bloody neighbour. Okay, off we go. Boof, 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 boof. Scare the crap out of the neighbour.
Helen, let me ask you, as a practicing witch, and it's part of your daily life, what do you use your witchcraft for? What tools or what spells or what things do you usually do that helps you out in your daily routine?
Do you use an FM?
What? An FMA?
Yeah.
A knife?
The knife. Yeah, the knife.
Yeah. I tend to keep that for rituals rather than any kind of spell work. And really, it's like Mark was saying earlier, it's an extension of yourself. It's a tool that will kind of help amplify and direct your energy. But on a day-to-day basis, I will use I will use magic to say, like at the moment, I've got mugwort, which is a herb that we use over here, which is very similar to sage, like smudge sticks. I've got mugwort hanging all over the place, and I will be making smudge sticks out of them. So that's a little craft that I'm doing at the moment. Day to day, I might use a black mirror for scrying to give me any kind of visions that I can use in other parts of my witchcraft. Day to day, I'll do things like smudging. I'll always make sure the house is kept cleansed and protected. We do lots of healing and health spells for people, especially right now because the earth is acting a little bit strangely. You know, with the temperatures and the fires and the various things going on around the world, we try and lend ourselves a little bit to just trying to put some energy out there with the hope of trying to make things right with the world again. But yeah, we can direct healing to a certain person. If that person has asked or is okay with that, we will get together and we will send out healing to a particular person. Like Irene, you were telling me you went to good yesterday. So
yeah, did you do it? I was just saying, did you do anything? Because I felt lousy last night. I was tired, I was worn out, and one thing or another. Today, totally different.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't even sleep that well last night.
Oh.
You know, I kept waking up because of the dogs and one thing or another. So it wasn't as if I had a good night's sleep. But today I feel really, really energized. You know, totally as if I'd slept 48 hours or something like that. You know, I really do feel. So did you do anything?
I did. I sent out a healing spell. Got candles. I make my own candles. Literally, you light a green candle.
Oh, thank you. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. Signifies health. You make them small because if you've got like a big sort of tape candle, you can't keep that going forever and ever and ever. It's just very hard to do. So you get a little green candle. You maybe anoint it with some herbs or some oils. And you literally light it and sit in front of it. Think of the person you want to send that healing energy to, and out it goes.
Yeah. Do you use different coloured candles for different things?
Yes.
You do.
Yeah. We have just passed on the 1st of August was a big fire festival for us called Lammas, and Lammas is derived from an Anglo-Saxon term meaning loaf mass. So it's very similar to Harvest Festival that the Christians have. So we'll bake bread. We made some corn dollies to hang up around the house. So there's lots of different things we'll do at different times of year. And Lammas, the colours, I've changed my altar cloth to greens and yellows and golds. I've got 2 corn dollies on there now. So yeah, we try and bring different things in from the earth at different times of the year. But that's Lammas. And the next one we'll have is the autumn equinox, which we call Mabon. And that again will be like the final fruits of the earth coming in before the dark nights start drawing in. But that's sort of mid-September time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all very interesting, isn't it, Mark? Do you know, half of these things that you've talked about tonight, I've got in this house. Besides the wands and my broomstick, I've got crystals. I've got different coloured candles. I've got, I did have a corn dolly. I don't know where it is. I've got a scrying mirror. I've got quite a lot of things. And all the time you're talking about these different things, I'm thinking to myself, I've got one of them in the drawer upstairs. So I've got one. Just stuff that I've picked up or been attracted to over the years when I've been travelling around, you know?
Yeah. I think what you can do with your broomstick, and it's an old sort of craft woman thing that I picked up when I was down in Cornwall. If you've got it with the bristles facing down, you're happy and everything's okay. Now, if you ever feel like you have unwanted guests or people are coming around that you're not entirely happy or comfortable about them staying at any length of time, can you bring the other way up? So the bristles point upwards and you put it by the door, and it's to keep out unwanted guests.
Oh, at the moment, the bristles are pointing upwards, and it's by the back door in the boot room. Yeah. And that's the way I just placed it. I just put it that way. I stored it there. But
it's a shame because, when you think about or see images of a witch in a cute little cottage surrounded by herbs and gardens and lovely things like that, I mean, there are certain things that if you have that, you could do, like plant rosemary by your door for protection, and you've got lavender there as well. And there's certain herbs that are just amazing for that type of thing. Because I make... Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, this house, right, is surrounded by hawthorn.
Ooh.
And I looked it all up and everything. And apparently they used to, years and years ago, they used to plant hawthorn in the perimeters of the house, around the houses, to keep the witches out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that.
Hawthorn is a great magical tree that has multiple uses, especially in wands.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. And, I had a famous television medium here once, and I scared the shit out of her, to tell you the truth. I mean, Mark, I'm sorry I said that word. You'll have to get that word out. But I did scare the crap out of her. And she left the house in quite a bit of a hurry. But as she went, she screamed back to me, "Can I take some of your hawthorn?" And she just pulled, she must have tore her hands to pieces. She tore a piece of hawthorn off of one of the bushes outside, one of the trees outside, at the front. And off she went, jumped into a taxi, and she left at quite a speed, actually. It wasn't actually me that scared the crap out of her. It was the house that scared the crap out of her, Mark. Are you there, Mark?
That's actually a bit naughty. That's a bit naughty.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
When we go and pick herbs and things from the wild, we try to give something back. Like, I don't know, like get a glass of milk or bread or some sort of small offerings to say, thank you for letting me use this, and here you go. That's something nice for you.
Well, why she wanted the hawthorn, I don't know, except for the fact that the legend is down here that they planted hawthorn to stop the witches or keep the witches at bay. Also, there's a yew tree out there at the front, on the corner of the house, an old yew tree. Yeah. Did you know the yew is poisonous? It's very poisonous, so don't let your animals or children touch the yew tree. I don't let my kids touch the yew tree at all.
I guess that's why they also use yew tree wood for the dead.
Yeah, but it was definitely the house that scared her, made her run out. She's meant to be a famous television medium, and one hour. Well, she was okay in the house all the time. She was sitting at the table, in the dining room, drinking a hot cup of tea and not putting it on the saucer, but putting it on the table so that it left a white ring. She was okay there, and I thought, right, that's it, mate. That's a brand new table. You're for it now. So I just stirred up the house, and she's done her walkabout. So, I am awful, aren't I, Mark?
Yes, you are.
I stirred up the house and let the house do whatever the house wanted to do to her. So she done her walkabout. She got upstairs, and that was it. She ran. I've never seen a woman the size of this woman go down a set of stairs like mine and straight out that bloody front door. And I'm not staying in this house a minute longer, she goes. Can I have some of your yew tree? She's off. Out the gates and into the cab and gone.
Oh, dear.
Fuck that filming up.
strange though, isn't it? You know, even the most normal like person in the world, when something like that comes up and you don't want people in your house, I don't know, we do seem to have a knack of putting out an energy that gets rid of them.
Yeah, but honest to God, this woman, she was so funny. She was so funny. She had crystals. She had them stuck down her knickers, in her bra, anywhere. She wore, and she quite openly said that where they were and everything, and the fact that they're there for her protection. I thought, how bloody uncomfortable. You know, you've only got, it's all very well slipping a crystal in your knickers, but if it slips down and round and you sit on a chair, it's not going to hurt your bum, is it? So a strange woman, absolute strange woman. You know, never again will I let a television crew into my house.
Well, unless it's ours.
Well,
unless it's ours.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was...
I just made a mojo bag. A little spell bottle or something.
Yeah. She shouldn't have put the cup. I put the saucer down. I even put a coaster on that table. You know, it was a brand new table. It cost a lot of money. And she put the cup on the table, and I picked it up twice and put it on the saucer for her. And still she didn't get it. She still kept putting it on the table. So I thought, fuck you. You know, and like I said, I stirred up the house and scared the crap out of her. Well, I had fun.
Now, Helen, you mentioned before you mostly work alone, but are you part of a coven, or do you mingle with other witches in your area?
I actually run a coven.
You run a coven?
Yeah, I do, yeah. And I couldn't have asked for a nicer bunch of people. You know, I ran a coven many, many years ago when I lived in York, but I have gone back to being solitary. I moved from Manchester, I went to where I am now. There's a lot of moving about, and it's taken a while to connect with people here, but my Real Witches of Pendle group on Facebook helped me make friends up here and, you know, connect with all these people. And slowly over time, we've gone from a group of people that like spending time together to a group of people that work very closely together in a magical sense. And they all have various abilities and gifts. Some of them are just starting out, and some of them know a little bit more. But they all were becoming a little bit blasé about working by themselves. For a lot of people, working by themselves will work, and they'll enjoy it. Me, I prefer, to be honest, to work in a group. Because you find sometimes when you're working alone, when you go to celebrate the Eight Sabbaths, it becomes more of a routine than something that you enjoy doing.
So it's more a celebration when you're with other people.
Yeah.
And is it true that a coven, or is it still the same that a coven is made up of 13 people?
I think that's the maximum amount of people you could really have.
Yeah, 13.
Yeah. Otherwise it becomes unmanageable, especially if they're varying degrees of knowledge of the past. You know, if you had 6 people that were brand new to it, as well as maybe another 6 people who have been practicing for 20 odd years, it could be very difficult to then work it around both of them. Because, you know, new people need to learn things, but the people that already know those things then have to wait until they've caught up a little bit. So I guess that could be quite frustrating. My group was about 11 of us, and to be perfectly honest, that works just well for all of us.
Yeah.
Not only that, but, you know, we live in small houses up here in the north.
Yeah.
I really could not get any more people in my front room. I'd be sitting deck chairs outside in the street otherwise. But we're actually really lucky. One of the other witches lives in the next street along from me. And we've got a wood right at the end of where we live. I'm on a beautiful cobbled street, and it's an old Victorian house. But yeah, we've got the wood down there, so we'll meet up here and we'll do stuff here like make incense and spell bags and stuff like that. And then we'll go down to the wood, we'll celebrate, and then we go to my friends on the next street and we'll just have a big old party and lots of drinking.
Yeah.
So it works really well for us.
Has any of your friends ever been married by hand fasting?
Yes, I've got a couple in the coven.
Yeah,
they've been together now for many years, ever since they were very young, and they did have a hand fasting a while ago, and they've asked me if I can do one for them next year. I think it's coming up in February. So I'll be doing a hand fasting for them, and I've done hand fastings in the past, and I just love it. I'll be bringing my broom along, and I can jump over that and have.
I was going to say, you're going to be jumping over your broom.
Yes, that's got to be done. Every day.
So when you're all together, what do you wear? Do you wear robes and things like, hooded capes or anything?
I kind of would
like what you see in the film.
I would love for us all to have something like that. I think really the only reason that came about is because it sets you apart from the normal everyday things that you do. Yeah. Maybe you'd have a ritual bath, you'd get dressed, you'd put your robes on, and it kind of puts it in your mind that you're then going to do magic, and it's something above and beyond everyday life. And then you've got the sky-clad people that decide.
I was going to ask you about the sky-clad ones.
To be fair, I really do not agree with it. It's not something I'd ever encourage anyone to do.
Well, not in this country. It can get a bit chilly around the willy, can't it?
No. And, I think the argument for sky-clad is that they prefer it because you're then all equals and you have more power. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but if you, as a witch, think you have power to begin with, how is your clothes going to hinder that? It makes no sense.
Well, so, just to clarify for us over here on this side of the pond, I'm guessing sky-clad means buck naked.
Naked.
That's right, buck naked. I had to, I worked for an organisation once where I had to keep an eye on somebody that was in a nudist colony. Okay. So, I can tell you there is a hell of a lot of differences. Nobody is the same. Nobody's the same.
Did you mentally put fig leaves over certain areas,
No.
Nope. You dirty girl.
But I know there was a group on the South Downs many years ago that used to go sky-clad, run around stark naked up there. What they were, I presume they were from a coven, and they may not have been. They may just have been exhibitionists. I don't know.
The first time that I ever read about sky-clad was in a book by Janet and Stuart Farrar, and they were saying that like the whole coven would be naked. There are even photos of them in the book being naked, and that they were putting across the argument that we all come into the circle as all equals.
Yeah.
Well, my train of thought on that is a circle makes you all equals anyway. There's no sides. There's no hierarchy to a circle. Yeah. I think that everybody should be as equal as each other. So I would not class myself as being like a high priestess. I'm just the one that happens to put this group together. But they are all as important as me.
Very well said. And like I was going to have said earlier on, it is not wise to go sky-clad in the UK. it is very chilly around the Willy in the winter months.
Yeah, so, and it probably wouldn't, and police probably won't look too kindly on.
No, they wouldn't.
People running around the countryside.
No, they definitely
wielding knives or wands or whatever.
This isn't the bloody south of France.
Oh yeah, it's like we were going. I was talking to my grandchildren. You're talking about the south of France. I was talking to my grandchildren about going to Italy and everything. And it was, Nanny, they're not going to have their boobies out on the beach, are they? I said, no way, darling. No, they're not going to have boobies out on the beach. Only when we went to Spain, they had boobies out on the beach. So no, not in Italy. Definitely not in Italy.
I bet the baby was going, ooh, lunch.
Yeah.
And that was the men. Well, we're coming up to the end of the program here. I have just one final question to ask you, and that is, how does somebody become a witch or become a member of a coven? How do they, it's like you do recruiting? And again, I'm not being flippant here. I use humor but to ask questions, but do you use recruiting drives? I mean, how does somebody join a coven?
Well, the first part about how you become a witch, I guess it's just something that you realize slowly over time. Whether you actually put the term witch onto yourself, that's entirely up to you. Some people are witches and wouldn't ever say that they were. They just follow a nice natural path and it's all good with them. As regards to a coven, that's a little bit harder because they don't generally make themselves known. They'll do it very, very quietly, very discreetly, and it'll be through somebody that you know.
Okay.
It's a very long-winded type thing, I'd imagine. But me, I asked in my group if anyone would like to be part of a much smaller group that will work together very closely in relation to magic and the celebrations that we have, and would anybody be interested in that? Now, over time, I've had a lot of people interested, a lot of people coming in, and then we started meeting up and just seeing how the energy flows between us. Obviously, I've not told them I've booted them out so much as they've not had the commitments that we're looking to have. So it's watered down a little bit, and now there's 11 of us, which I'm perfectly happy with.
Okay.
To do magic with them for a long time to come.
And Helen, have you got a name for your coven? Is there a name to? There is.
Well, coven naming can be a funny thing because they'll go through trends. So people that tend to come up with more intricate names could then maybe in like 10 years' time go back and think, oh God, I wish I hadn't named it that. So the Coven of Pendle.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not just a place name for the coven, like Brighton Witches or something like that. No. Okay, and right, and you've got a Facebook page and a website, haven't you?
I do, yeah.
For anybody that's interested in looking at your website, are they able to?
Yeah. There's a website called The Real Witches of Pendle. It's on Weebly.
Which of the Pendles? Yeah.
The Real Witches of Pendle. Yeah.
Oh, The Real Witches of Pendle, yeah.
Pendle.weebly.com. And it just tells people a little bit about ourselves, what we're about, what we're interested in. I've got a little bit of my shop on the site because I make things for other witches to use.
Yeah, that's good. And the Facebook group is The Real Witches of Pendle. Ah, there you go, people. The Real Witches of Pendle, if you're interested in having a look. And especially, like Helen says, she's got a shop on there. So get out and buy stuff.
Well, we have run out of time. Our guest tonight has been Helen Libby Davidson. And Helen, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has really been a lot of fun talking with you tonight.
thank you guys. It's been great.
Okay, Mark, where can we be found? Everywhere.
Everywhere. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another edition of Paranormal UK Radio here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we will catch you all next time. Have a great week. And Irene, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye, everyone.